find a sound bite of, oh, Blake Lawrence with the interception, huge tackle, like what a savage, find it, Nathan. You know what's out there, bro.
Second down and 13. Harper, quick throw, far side, it's up the grabs. Intercepted, Nebraska!
It was Blake Lawrence, number 40. Oh, this guy is just everywhere on the field.
The startup investment landscape is changing, and world-class companies are being built outside of Silicon Valley. We find them, talk with them, and discuss the upside of investing in them. Welcome to Upside.
Woo!
Hello, and welcome to the Upside Podcast, the first podcast finding upside outside of Silicon Valley. I'm Eric Hornung, and I'm accompanied by my co-host, Mr. Go Pack Go himself, Jay Klaus. Jay, how's it going, man?
It's going well. I'm excited for another Packers season. Watching the Pack with my dad. I know that the draft is coming up. I'm not sure what day. Do you know what day the draft is?
That's actually pretty bad that I don't know, but it's also great that I don't know, Jay. You want to know why it's great I don't know?
I know you're going to tell me.
I am going to tell you. It's because I am a Browns fan, and for the last 20 years, I have cared so much about the NFL draft. It's my Super Bowl, right? We had multiple picks in the first round. We had the first overall pick twice in a row. So much excitement around the draft. And this year, for the first time in what is probably legitimately 2 decades, we don't have at all a first round pick. I don't even have to watch the first day of the draft. I don't even have to care.
How did that happen, by the way? Did they trade it for somebody? Was that an Odell Beckham trade?
Yeah, it was for Odell, my boy.
This year's first round pick for Odell?
This year's first round pick. I am so incredibly excited about Odell. He's been like my favorite player since he entered the league before the catch. You can even ask people who are in my fantasy league, like you, who drafted him his rookie year. I did. In fantasy, big fan.
Did I draft Odell last year or was it 2 years ago?
I think you drafted him 2 years ago when he got hurt.
He got immediately hurt.
Yeah, against the Browns, funny enough.
Oh my gosh. Excited about fantasy football. The problem is, the further I get away from caring about things like the draft and young players, I continue to draft players like Larry Fitzgerald because I think they're going to be a great pick, and I'm just out of touch. But I love our fantasy league.
Yeah, our fantasy league is a lot of fun. There are a lot of customized rules. There's 2 quarterbacks. There's a short bench. It's deep starters. It's there's a lot of unique things that make it very hard to just kind of pull up a cheat sheet and draft.
2 quarterback leagues, when you have 12 teams, highly recommend. I think that changes the fantasy game.
Yeah, because you have to reach for a third quarterback or hope that a quarterback gets injured and you can pick up, Matt Leinart as a backup or something.
Also, our league is the only one that does the auction style drafting, and the game theory of that with some pretty smart dudes, very fun.
Also some pretty dumb dudes. We have a wide range in this league.
Yeah, true.
For the listeners, Jay and I are in a fantasy league together in case you didn't pick up on that.
In case you didn't put it together. And the reason we're talking about fantasy is today's episode involves athletics. Today we're talking to Blake Lawrence, the founder and CEO of Opendorse. Opendorse is an athlete marketing platform that helps the biggest brands in sports share content on social. Founded by 2 former major college athletes, Opendorse was built seeking to make it easy for athletes and their partners to work together to engage their fans. Today, they have close to 6,000 athletes using the platform with over 900 million social media followers.
Do you follow any athletes on social media? I think you follow 150,000 people on Twitter. Are any of them athletes?
I follow sub 2,000 people on Twitter.
390,000 people, I think.
And a couple of them are athletes. Not a lot of athletes.
Why not?
Well, I'm not the biggest sports guy. That I will admit to. On most of my social media, I'm trying to follow people who bubble up scarce and, thought-intensive stuff. And most athletes are tweeting about their teams and what's going on in their world, and that's just not my world. I also feel like a lot of when I've seen athletes, the things that are most interesting to me are when they are sharing either behind the scenes stuff, something that I can't typically have access to, but I don't necessarily want or need promo.
Yeah, I understand that. I think from my perspective, and I don't really follow many athletes. I think I follow Odell, who we just talked about. I think I follow LeBron. Very Cleveland of me.
I follow LeBron. I actually like watching LeBron's son's highlights on Instagram.
I don't know where to go with that, so I'm just going to leave that one out there for the listeners to dissect. But I've been wanting to, for a while, make lists of my favorite teams and just have all of the rosters, all of the people from one team on there. So like a list on Twitter of all the Cleveland Indians, a list on Twitter of all the Cleveland Browns. I don't really follow, I like the Packers, but I don't follow like the drama of the Packers as much. So I think that those two would be good for me. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should just actually sit down with the roster and do it.
A little bit more background here on Opendorse. It was founded in 2012, based in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is where our editor of the show, Nathan, lives. They've raised $9.5 million to date. $3 million of that closed just this month in April. And I believe some of the entities they already work with are the PGA Tour, the LPGA, the NFL Players Association, the New Jersey Devils, and Michigan, Clemson, Nebraska. Some big names in the athletic space.
You know what's crazy about athlete profiles? Just how many followers they have, man. Like, I get that LeBron and Odell have a lot of followers. They're some of the biggest names in sports. But even just these freshmen at Ohio State with 10,000 followers, 50,000 followers, it's just insane.
Yeah. And I imagine there's huge opportunity that I don't even quite understand of how to leverage that, either directly monetarily or not. And I assume Opendorse is helping athletes to do that.
Well, let's find out.
As we go through this interview, guys, if you have thoughts, you can email us hello@upside.fm or tweet at us, preferably at upsidefm. We'd love to hear what athletes you follow and what athletes we should be following. So tweet those at us at upsidefm and we'll give it a look. We'll jump into that interview with Blake right after this.
But before we do that, let's bring in Rob McDonald, a partner at Taft, Stettinius, and Hollister, to teach us about private placements and fundraising. Taft is a law firm known for assisting entrepreneurs across the heartland. And as a quick reminder, the following remarks by Taft attorneys are for informational purposes only and are not legal advice. This information is not intended to create, and receipt of it does not constitute an attorney-client relationship. No person or organization should act upon this information without first seeking professional counsel. Rob, you are becoming a regular on the podcast, our third co-host.
It's great to be back. Excited we were able to get through all that legalese.
Oh, I know. You gotta love a good disclaimer.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of legalese, an important part of every fundraising negotiation is the term sheets. What are the most important terms for an entrepreneur to be aware of when raising capital?
Obviously, valuation and amount raised are two of the most important terms. These two terms combined will define how much of the company will be sold. However, with liquidation preferences, dividends, and other rights tied to securities, the percentage of ownership alone could be misleading. So it is important to fully understand the economic terms and how they play out in the long run. Beyond the economic terms, the founders will also want to pay particularly close attention to what I call the power terms. Who votes on what, who holds what board seats, etc. It is easy to lose sight of the power dynamics if founders are too focused on the economics. Lastly, I encourage founders to look at deal costs. Some investors require all kinds of terms that cost the company money, sometimes for good reason. Things like key man insurance, board travel fees, legal fees for investors, etc. It is worth tracking how much the transaction will cost to complete top to bottom.
Awesome. If people want to learn more about Taft or yourself, where should they go?
They should go to www.taftlaw.com or my Twitter at RWM.
Blake, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
On Upside, we like to start with a background of the founder. So can you tell us about the history of Blake?
History of Blake. Blake's story, I won't talk in third person.
No, let's do third person the entire interview. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
So Blake was just a young boy in Kansas City. My story, journey in entrepreneurship, I'll take you back to Kansas City playground. I'm third grade. My older brother's in fourth grade. And we see the cool kids on the playground. We're surrounded by the other kids, and they're handing out M&Ms or Skittles or a piece of a candy bar. And in that moment, my brother and I decided we could either be the cool kids or be the plug for the cool kids. And I think the entrepreneurial side of me said, let's be the plug. So we did a stakeout to find out when there were no teachers in the teacher's lounge. And we would sneak in with our lunch money, put $1 in, get a candy bar or Skittles or M&Ms and go to the playground and sell them for $2 a pop, right? So we would go in and we would double our money every day. And my mom had no idea how we came home with more money than we went to school with, and that we were cooler than the cool kids because we were the ones you had to go to be cool. And I think that origin story going all the way back is the roots of entrepreneurship, thinking differently. And then that kind of brings you all the way through to where we are today. So I thought you guys would enjoy that. If you ever were buying candy bars on the playground from a kid, that was me.
I both love candy bars, and I both aspired to be the cool kid in school. Never really quite pulled it off, but I had the same aspiration.
Yeah, we got busted about 2 months into the whole operation with candy bars in our pocket in the teacher's lounge. But to digress, bring it back, grew up in a football family. So my older brother, we grew up playing football. Football was our everyday life. He went on to play quarterback at Kansas University, and I went to the University of Nebraska to play linebacker. So I was recruited all over the country. I was one of the top recruits in the country, and decided I was going to go to Nebraska so I could beat my brother in football, because Nebraska usually beats Kansas in football, and ended up playing as a true freshman, starting as a sophomore and junior at linebacker. So it's a much bigger than I am today, which I'm proud of that. But
yeah, what was your playing weight?
It was about 230, 235, about 200 pounds now. So got up pretty quick and really enjoyed that experience. Of course, football being a part of my everyday life, becoming a starting linebacker in Nebraska is quite an accomplishment. I was proud of that. And then in 2009, so 10 years ago, it all came to a screeching halt. I had to step away from the game instantly. I had suffered 4 concussions in a little over a year, and decided that I was going to protect my long-term health and stop playing football. And that was an identity crisis for me, guys. And I think that everyone listening, and you both know that moment when everything you thought you were is now gone, and you're trying to figure out who you are and what you're going to do next. And one day I was a starting linebacker in Nebraska, and the next day I had to find myself. And that's where I focused on what that entrepreneur journey, like those origin stories, trying to think, well, if I wasn't focused all my energy on football, maybe I could focus on solving problems. So at the time, I was the first guy on the team that was using Twitter in 2009. I'd built up a little bit of an audience, about 500 or 1,000 followers on Twitter, mostly local fans, media members. And so I said, man, this is the way I'm going to stay connected to this fan base. Nebraska sports fans are diehard. The whole state loves their student athletes and football. And so I said, I'm going to dive way into this. So I started tweeting and, building connections there and building up this presence. And I was tweeting stuff I probably shouldn't have, honestly. I mean, we all were 10 years ago. But it was like, Roy tweaked his hamstring. Like, hope he feels better. And like the guys in Vegas were like, okay, we got to follow this guy, right? But I started getting hit up from some local businesses saying, hey, you built up your social media presence. Can you help me out? So I said, sure, let's do it. So started to hustle a little bit and kind of help these local businesses build up their social media. Got to a point where we had a couple, and one of my best friends and roommates in college is Audie Kanalik, who's our co-founder of Opendorse. And we've been working together for every day since day one. Having a conversation, he said, hey, you're helping these businesses. I'm about to go and finish my last year of football in Nebraska. What if we made this a real thing? Like, what if we weren't just hustling and pushing out tweets, but we built a company around us to solve this problem for not just a couple, but thousands of companies? So he said, sure, let's do it. And so we started our first company in August 2010. It's called Hurrdat, Hurrdat. It's a social media agency. And here I am a year ago. I would have been preparing for being the starting linebacker in Nebraska, and now I'm preparing a business plan and LLC docs and pitches and trying to get things going. So what can happen in a year? It's pretty impressive. And so Audie and I started that company really to help businesses connect with their audience on social media, blog, tweet, Facebook all day, which was difficult to explain to my parents that was actually what I was going to be doing. But it turned out to be a great success. I mean, we built that from the 2 of us to 25 employees. We sold it in 2014 so we could focus all of our energy on Opendorse. But those early days of Audie and I, who we'd always been a part of a team, but now building a team and understanding what does it take to get people to trust and buy in and believe, not just from the customer side, but also from the employee side. So that was a great first experience.
What did running a social media agency look like in 2010? What types of things were you doing for these companies that needed a 25-person headcount?
Well, and a lot of content creation. But content creation in 2010 was very different. Also analytics. So in 2010, you couldn't post photos to Facebook. You had to have a page. You didn't have pages. You had just profiles for businesses. Twitter, you couldn't post photos. You had to use things like TwitPic or YFrog. And so we did a lot of content, like just copywriting and blogs. We did a lot of blogging, which was long form, so we could drive people from Facebook to the blog or from LinkedIn to the blog. And that's where we would help convert. Yeah, so it was very different than today. And then even then, Facebook and Twitter didn't have any analytics. So we had built our own analytics process where we would, on the front end, the customer would see like this beautiful report. On the back end, guys, we're going in and counting up how many likes this one post got and comments, and we would update it on a daily basis. It was madness. But thank goodness, analytics came around 2011, 2012. It started to actually become an industry.
It's crazy to think that just 10 years ago, we were using TwitPic. That feels like a lifetime ago, but it really wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't. So I've grown up on social, and this is something my career has been built in that space, and just thinking about the core principles of the same problem I was trying to solve for myself, which is I have this audience. They've elected to follow me for a reason. How do I engage them on a continuous basis, right? And bringing that same mindset into these businesses and brands, like that really helped us within our social media agency. But guys, I got to tell you about this aha moment, or like the moment we became obsessed with solving the problem that Opendorse solves today. It's 2011, and one of my best friends is Prince Amukamara. He is a cornerback now for the Chicago Bears, but at the time, a freshly drafted first-round draft back to the New York Giants. And he had, 5,000 or 10,000 followers and went to 100,000 followers overnight on all of his social channels. And he calls me up and says, "Hey, I know you're helping all these businesses, man, but I got all these fans in New York now, and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to keep them engaged. So can you help me with my social media, help me keep my audience active?" And I said, "Sure, let's do it." And so we sat down and created a plan. Said, "We're going to provide you photos and videos that really talk on key things in New York. We're going to talk about Nebraska, like different things that your fans want to see from you. But Prince, we're gonna send them to you because we want you to share it." I mean, the authenticity, the relationship that athletes have with their audience is really built on the fact that it feels like this is the guy. Like this is coming straight from my favorite athlete, my favorite player. And so we never wanted to post for him. We always wanted him to have total control of the content. So we would package it up and say, "Hey, Prince, this is the photo. Post it on Twitter at 5:00 with this caption. Like it's gonna pop." And we'd text it to him, and then we'd wait. And 5:00 would roll around and nothing would happen. And we're like, well, maybe he didn't get it. So we'd like email it to him the next day and say, "Hey, post it today." And then nothing would happen. We'd Dropbox it, direct message, like everything we tried, we couldn't actually get him to share this content. And, you get on the phone with the guy and you say, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh man, I love it. This is super cool." Like, and he's paying us for this and he's still not sharing it. He's like, "But I'm going in between practice. I got, trying to chase maybe a new girlfriend," which became his wife, and he's like, "I just got a lot of things going on. I wish you could do it for me, but I don't want you to do it for me." And so that was a challenge because we're saying, man, Prince's career could be over in a second. Like, I know that all too well. Some guys play in the league for 5 years, 10 years. Some play for 5 months. In fact, Audie Kanalik, my business partner, played in the NFL for a year. That's it, right? And so we know it can be over in a second. But he's got hundreds of thousands of people that want to hear from him. So we became obsessed with making it easy for Prince to share content on social. Like, that was just it. That was like, how are we going to get this guy to actually do this so he doesn't miss out on an opportunity of a lifetime?
You mentioned back in 2009, 2010 or so, when you're starting to share things, you're sharing some things that you probably shouldn't have. At the time, this is something I told Eric in the intro, I was writing for the student newspaper at Ohio State, and that was happening with Ohio State players too, and that would cause a little bit of a ruckus. What was going on with teams as it relates to athletes' social media at the time?
At that time, the teams were still trying to figure their channels out, right? And we're still at that point. This is like social media 1.0. It's hashtag SM Sports, social media sports. It's a great resource on Twitter. That industry is still maturing. And at that time, Ohio State, Nebraska, the Giants, the NFL, they were all still trying to figure out how they're going to use social media. So it still doesn't, like, this story advances, to today, where teams are still trying to figure out, okay, now we've got their bases covered. We should think about what these athletes are saying and doing, right? And we've been on that side for the last 6.5, 7 years on trying to help athletes along. So eventually when those teams look at the athletes, at least there's somebody out there that's been looking out for them. And I'll tell you about how that story's evolved. But at the time, athletes were running rampant. They could say whatever they want, whenever they want. And that's why you see a lot of things sneak up. And it's probably like the pre-2013 era, like this dark space in social media where all of us really had no idea where this was going. And we would say whatever we want without regard to what it could do for our future.
Help me understand the difference between you guys posting something for Prince and you sending him exactly what to say, exactly what photo to post, and exactly what time to do it. Where's the authenticity that's added by him posting it?
Yeah. Well, there's always the opportunity for them to edit the copy, right? So the athletes can adjust the copy so it actually sounds like them. But then also it's visibility into it. So imagine that we post right after practice some highlight of Prince, and at practice that day, he busted up his ankle, right? And so here he is stretched out. Everyone's talking about how he got injured that day, and he's tweeting about how awesome it is to be a Giant. Like that is a dangerous world to be in. And so that is part of the balance of authenticity, is not just the copy, right? But it's about the awareness on the other side. And that's happened. We've been in situations many times, where athletes with all good intentions were supposed to post something, but then something happened in their personal life that made them not want to even touch social media. And that's okay. We want to protect that relationship.
So this is, you said about 2011 when you had this aha moment with Prince. Yep. You sold her dat in 2014. Yep. So what was the evolution of the athlete side of things leading up to focusing on it full time?
Yeah, so we tried all these different methods from 2011, all the way through. And then late 2012, we said, I think we got something here. And this is when we started Opendorse. And we had a software engineer on our team that was working on some things for our social media agency side. And we kind of put his resources into trying to solve this problem for Prince. So we built a tool that Prince would connect through the Twitter API and Facebook API, his social accounts. Then what we would do is load up the photos and videos or whatnot into the tool, and Prince would get a text message anytime that we had content. And he clicks a link and it shows him the photo, the channel, the copy. He can edit it. And there's a big green button and a little red button. And it's like, Prince, if you want to share the content, you like it, just hit the green button and the platform will do the rest. And that was in late 2012. We officially got that in his hands. 2013 started polishing it and put it in the market. But this changed everything for us guys. It went from Prince wouldn't share any content. He shared everything, and he started to build up his presence. And so that was early 2013. And when we officially got the product into the market, and then Prince showed it to his agent at CAA, which is a giant sports talent agency. And they added Eric Decker and Golden Tate and Demarius Thomas. I'm sitting there like, this is cool. A month later, we got a call from the NFL Players Association, so the union who represents every NFL player. They said, hey, we have a problem. Can you come out to DC and let's talk about it? And I'm like, oh, shoot. Like, what did we do? Are we in trouble? Flew to DC, sat down with their leadership team, and they said, here's the problem. And again, I'm like racing. They said, we've got 1,600 athletes that are all supposed to be fulfilling content, tweeting, posting on Facebook for all of our sponsors and licensees, and they're not doing it. It's a huge problem. I'm like, oh, so you have the problem. Like, we don't have the problem. So, those are key little nuances. And they said, can you help us? We said, absolutely. And so we are really a month removed from actually making this thing happen. And we're in DC talking about a long-term partnership with NFLPA and all their players and sponsors and licensees. And that was serendipitous. Those moments, I could go back and live them forever. But from that point forward, it started us on this path of being a highly trusted and respected resource in the world of sports marketing and athlete marketing. And, that set us down a path. So the first 3 years of Opendorse, we started to build up these relationships, and really the tool was being used by sponsors like Courtyard Marriott, Tide, and they would log into Opendorse and they would select an athlete, Rob Gronkowski, and they want Rob to tweet about a new promotion of how to get a free room during the Super Bowl week. And then Rob gets a text, clicks a green button, we publish the content, like everybody's happy. So that was really the first 3 years of Opendorse. We're working with sponsors and licensees, guaranteeing that there's a fulfillment of these obligations by athletes. There's a second epiphany in 2016 I'll share, but I'll pause there.
So at this point, you guys were running the agency. I'm guessing that was kind of just like funding the build out of this thing. You had this meeting with the NFL Players Association. When were you like, all right, I guess 2014, but what was the tipping point to say, let's just do this full bore?
There are moments as a founder where you see a path that gets you super excited. And for some founders, that's the shiny object that appears every week, every month. And even though we were only a couple years into our first company, there was a lot of shiny objects. And that's something that it's hard to ignore. And every founder has to go through that. But when those shiny objects keep popping up, right, and then it's something that you become obsessed with, it's something you think about all day, every day, and it's also aligned with what you care about, right? And remember, this helping an athlete share content on social seems like a simple, nuanced niche thing, but for me, it was my life. Like, this is my story. I was an athlete. It ended, and all I had left were these people that followed me that still support me to this day. And I imagined, what if we could do this for every athlete on the planet, right? Not just Prince, not just a couple of guys with this, but like every athlete on the planet. And it just kept us up at night. I mean, Audie played in the NFL again for a year, right? His career was done. And we're sitting there saying, like, when we started our social media agency, we're the first social media agency in Nebraska, right? Proud of that. Her dad is still around today. And we're the first social media agency in Nebraska. But by the time we sold it, there were one of 6 in Lincoln, right? But this chance to do this to help every athlete solve this problem, like, we're still today one of one in the world doing it exactly how we do it. And like, to me, that's impactful. That's the type of thing that I'm doing exactly what I want to do with the people I want to do it. So you can't ignore those things too long. You
mentioned that Prince had something like 500 followers that went to like 5 or 100,000 overnight when he went to New York.
Yep.
How does that happen? I look and I see incoming freshmen at major college programs with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of followers. Just how does that happen?
It's a natural part of this sports fandom, right? And Ohio State, you're a Buckeye, right?
Yep.
And they're one of our partners, so we work closely with them. They have an internal, while they're at Ohio State, they have brand building initiatives for the student athletes on campus. It's fantastic. That wasn't there 7 years ago. But this relationship between an athlete and their audience is so deeply ingrained in our culture, it's hard to even take a step back and understand it. But if you combine the passion that we've always had for sports as a culture in America and a culture globally, athletes are at the center of everything. Michael Jordan, right? We're fans of MJ, not necessarily the Bulls, right? We like the Bulls because of Jordan. But before social media, all we knew about Jordan was whatever he said behind the podium, which was staged and propped up, whatever he said in a magazine, which was obviously cut and clipped by everybody under the sun. So we never quite knew these guys. But the growth of social media has given this connection that couldn't exist before real legs. And it's starting earlier and earlier. And athletes with the recruiting era are getting a lot of buzz and hype while they're still in high school. Then they go to college and they are continually showing the world that they have a direct connection with their audience. And that's how this has continued to evolve, is that people feel connected to people first and foremost on social. And our stars in the world of sports are the athletes. So it's a day in an era of the influencer or the creator on social media. Athletes are the OG influencers, man. These guys for centuries have been idolized, and now we have a connection to them that we didn't have previously. So that's how those things happen. That's how people want to know who's coming to town, whether it's the new recruit at Ohio State or the first round draft pick for the Giants. People want to follow and get to know those people.
These fans, what type of, I totally buy into that, because I would want to know anybody that, I follow their team. I like to know them as people. So if they're tweeting out stuff for their licensees or their sponsors, Tide or whatever with Gronk, what are fans' reactions to that type of content from athletes?
There's always a balance. Athletes have been a natural endorser of local businesses and products. Like their local car dealership always has some athlete in the picture, right? And that's been accepted in the traditional advertising realm. Athletes and advertisements is accepted. Now, athletes advertising through their own channels still gets a mixed reaction. But one of my favorite trends in today in 2019 is that fans are understanding these are people that are securing the bag, right? Like that has become like, get that money, secure the bag, good for you. And they're finding a new level of respect, not I think because these guys are humanized now, right? It's like, hey man, I'm good for you. I'm so glad that Campbell's Chunky or Pepsi is paying you because you're my guy. I want you to secure the bag. And that's a shift in culture. But I think it's coming from the fact that everyone that's listening has a friend that's an influencer that's getting paid or getting free product to post on Instagram or Twitter. Like everyone knows somebody. And when they post it, all of us are saying, good for you, man. Like you did it. Somebody's willing to pay you to share something. Now that's more relatable. And we don't look at athletes as this like superhuman being, but like right beside us. And I think that's been good in terms of the positive reaction to those types of promotions.
How are athletes that aren't using the Opendorse platform using social media? Like, is it being managed? And then is it different between like the Odells and LeBrons of the world? Like, how do they manage their social media? And how does someone like, I don't know, like a Quincy Enunwa or Amir Abdullah or backup linebacker for the Cleveland Browns, like how do they manage their social media?
Yeah, so the superstars have a team around them. They're helping them think of content, push out content, and they're paying those individuals to provide support. Most of them do, right? So Odell, LeBron, Juju Smith-Schuster, those types of athletes have a team, right? Steph Curry has a team around him. But that is the top 1% of athletes that even have that. So the other guys are finding ways on their own to do it. The younger athletes are natural. I mean, the guys that are coming into Ohio State are a lot better at social media than the guys leaving. And the guys leaving Ohio State today are a hell of a lot better than the guys that left 4 years ago. So it's only getting better of people owning that voice, but they're looking for help. And if you look at the state of athletes on social, the average athlete shares 6 posts a month on social media across Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, 6 posts a month. The average influencer shares 6 posts a day. The average sports team shares 30 posts a day, and the average sports league will be over 50 a day, right? So you're talking about an athlete shares 6 posts a month, right? Versus 1,000 a month for a sports team and several thousand for a league, and influencers are in the several hundreds. So athletes are still not maximizing the value of this platform. And it's because the majority of athletes don't have someone there to help them. Like they can't afford to pay somebody to create content for them, or they don't have even an inkling of what that means. Like most athletes are not marketers. And that's the biggest difference between athletes and influencers and athletes and teams and leagues, is that these guys have an audience, not because they pander, not because they know how to create content or engage their audience. They have an audience because they run fast and jump high. And that's not a knock on like their ability to understand marketing. It's just simply true. So that's why we feel our calling is to be the company that helps every athlete. And we're doing it today. And I'll tell you how we're doing it. But I'm excited because there's a lot of upside in this market, pun intended. Let's roll.
So you're telling me there is a full team behind Odell's like looking eyes emoji tweet?
Yes. Yes, there is. The NFL is helping Odell. The Browns are helping Odell. His agency's helping Odell. His Odell's mother is involved in his social media presence. So Odell's been a longtime user of Opendorse, and it's been fun to see him grow. Right, his story is evolved. So I want to say centered on that, and then I'm going to show you this like epiphany. Can I do that?
Yeah, talk about this 2016 epiphany.
Yeah. I will. I'll put Odell right in the center, and of some of these, just to visualize the problem that we solve and why this is maybe sounds abstract, but it makes sense now, right? So Odell, as the face of Campbell's Chunky Soup, is tasked with pushing out, this is in 2015 or so, pushing out 1 tweet per week in promotion of his relationship with Campbell's Chunky Soup. And it's in a contract, it's a large contract. And at the end of the season, he had posted twice, right? And this is to visualize the problem that we solve. And Campbell's is saying, hey, this is one of the best potential partners ever, and we're not getting any of the value that we were promised. And you talk to Odell, and he's focused on the field. Like, he just had a breakout season, and his agent doesn't want to interrupt his flow. His mom doesn't want to call him up and say you're supposed to be posting about Chunky Soup. And so it just goes to the wayside. And in those moments, Odell, even though he's worked his tail off and he's getting lots of money on the field, like, he's dropping the ball. And so that is the problem that we come in and solve. And so, Campbell's and the sports marketing agency they work with licenses Opendorse, our software, and loads up 18 pieces of content for Odell to publish as part of their partnership over the entire season. And Odell gets a text message, clicks that green button, and then it's every single one of them goes out on cue, right? So what we're doing is we're helping Odell never drop the ball, which he rarely does.
A lot of puns here.
There, I'm all about it, man. But also helping Campbell's, realize the investment they've made in sports and be happy about it. And so now Campbell's is working with Dak Prescott. And so they continue their investment in sports because for these brands that want to engage and reach sports fans through athletes, one bad experience with an athlete can turn them off from the entire concept. So one athlete can ruin it for all of them. And so that was how Opendorse is being used up until 2016. So we hit this moment, guys, where we got 1,000 athletes using Opendorse. We're selling to sponsors and licensees, and every athlete, going back to the concept of how these guys get help, Eric, is saying, "Hey, how much are my tweets worth? Like you're $1,000. Well, how do I get 2,000? Well, you got to have more followers, more engagement. It's like, well, how do I get more followers, more engagement? Well, you got to share more content, right? It's got to be engaging content." He goes, "Well, where do I get content?" He's like, "Well, you either have to create it yourself or pay someone to create it for you." And he said, "Well, I'm not going to pay somebody because it's just not what I'm going to do. Even these guys have money. They don't want to pay for those types of things. And I'm too busy to create content." So we heard that 1,000 times, guys, like, how do I get more? And so our second epiphany was like, man, we got to find a way to get these guys access to content, like that can help them grow their brand, not get them paid, but just help them engage their audience, going back to why Prince called us in 2011. But we sold her that. We had sold our social media agency, which was a content creation, machine. And so we said, we're not going to create content, but we're going to find it for these guys. And so you take Amir Abdullah at Nebraska as an example. And we said, if we were going to create content for him, we'd want to share content about Nebraska football. And we thought to ourselves, we're not going to create content, but who in the world is creating content every day to engage Nebraska football fans? And the answer is Nebraska football, right? So we scheduled a call with the athletic department, went over to campus. Our office is right on campus, pretty much, and sat down and said, "Hey, we have this crazy idea. What if Amir Abdullah shared anything you want, anytime you want, just with a click of a button about Nebraska football?" And they said, "That sounds great. Like, how much is that going to cost, right? Like, how much do we have to pay Amir?" And I said, "Well, hold on to that." Then we go back to Amir and say, "Amir, guess what, man? We got a way for you to get high quality content to engage your fans to talk about Nebraska football. And we can get to you anytime." And Amir asked a question. This was like this aha moment. He goes, "How much is that going to cost?" And in that moment, we saw an opportunity where the content was so valuable to the athletes that they're willing to pay for it. And that the distribution is so valuable to the teams that they're willing to pay for it. And when you have those two, they cancel each other out. So what we created was our first relationship with Nebraska Athletics, where they would log in and there's no payment. They would select, Amir Abdullah and send him photos and videos, just like we were doing with Prince in 2011. And they started doing it for every alumni, and then Michigan called and Clemson called and TCU and Iowa and Florida and Georgia and Ohio State. And, you just go through this and they all started to use the platform that way. And it was like it transformed our business model into licensing our software to college athletic departments that were sending content to alumni. And then we got into pro sports and it just started to evolve where this is a behind the scenes, every team and league and athletic department starting to use a platform to increase the distribution of content through the athletes on their roster. And it was super rewarding because we started to help more and more athletes and it really took off.
So I know who your users are. Your users are teams, athletes, leagues. It sounds like the customer is the leagues, the teams, and the athletes are kind of a user of it that are not actively directly paying?
That's right. So Opendorse is free for athletes and agents. It's free to receive content through the platform, right? So we're a SaaS company, right? So we sell annual subscriptions to sports organizations and their sponsors. So they pay an annual fee to log in and send content to any athlete that's opted in to be a part of their roster. That's how the model has progressed. In the early days, it was all transactional. It was like, if Odell shares this post, then there's a payment. But if he doesn't, there isn't. But we've since shifted to a subscription model, which has really created this recurring revenue model and business and predictable revenue and growth. And it's been really exciting. So that's the model.
What's that annual fee to a organization or sponsor?
It's a range depending on the type of sponsor, but it's It starts at $10,000 a year on the low end and can go up to six figures a year depending on what bells and whistles you want within the software. But you kind of, your average customer is probably going to be below $30,000 a year, and then it goes from there.
Are those customers then the ones that have to chase the athlete down and say, hey, you got to get on Opendorse?
Yes, they are. They're inviting athletes to use Opendorse. But what's a unique thing about this was when Ohio State started using Opendorse, they have a relationship with Cardale Jones, they have a relationship with JT Barrett. Like, they invite Braxton Miller to the platform. So now we're not in the middle of it. Like, we're just providing the tool, and they send invitations out, right? And it's been really great to see it grow from that, because a year ago, we were up to 3,000 athletes using Opendorse a year ago, right? Right now, 6,600 athletes use Opendorse. So we've doubled the amount of athletes in just the last 12 months. And what's happening is that have really educated the market. These teams and leagues are, signing on, and they're inviting their entire roster, right? So we work with, Ohio State uses our platform with current student athletes. I can't talk to you about them by name, but it's transformed the amount of athletes we're able to help on a daily basis just by putting the tool in the hands of these teams, and they're inviting the athletes, they're sending content out, and we're impacting the sports conversation on a daily basis on social in a major, major way. You just never know it. You don't know if it was that, who helped Braxton Miller share that, right? Who helped Cardale Jones say that? Who helped Saquon Barkley say that? Rory McIlroy just posted about, his round of golf at the Masters. Like, how did that get there, right? So those are moments that we are behind that the average sports fan won't know. They're just seeing more content from their favorite athletes, and that's how it works.
So there are over 1,000 student athletes at Ohio State. We've talked mostly about football. I mean, you just mentioned golfer, but how do you decide which student athletes get access to Opendorse, or how does the organization decide?
We don't have a part in the decision of who they invite, right? So we provide the platform, and it's up to them who they want to invite and send content to. And most of them want to get everybody on campus outfitted with this, because what we talk about the early days of sports teams on social media, and they're trying to figure out what they're doing. Most teams have figured out like that they're going to pump this amount of content per day, and like the channels are getting bloated. And so you go to is there swimming and diving at Ohio State?
Oh, yeah.
I think they've won like a lot of Big Ten titles.
There you go. We'll take that. So you go to swimming and diving, and you take 150 photos of this swim and dive meet, or even a practice, and you might go post one of them on social media. And there are 25 student athletes that just participated in an event that they have nothing to share on their social channels. And you have a photographer who just took 150 photos and sees one of them posted. So what happens to those other 149 assets? They go and sit on a shelf and do nothing for the university, nothing for the student athlete. And so what we're seeing our partners do is take those assets that would be remnant inventory sitting on a shelf getting dusty, and student athletes who are disengaged with sharing their story because they have nothing to share. And they're combining the two, right? To share more content, more often engage fans directly through the athletes that are creating these moments. And so that's the next level of distribution in sports. And we're proud to be the engine that actually makes that possible.
What KPIs do you guys look at in your business to see how healthy it is? We talked about pricing, so let's skip past that. But what else?
I would say publish rate is something we look at and we're proud of. 80% of the content that is like sent to an athlete, and this is without compensation. So there's no compensation. 80% that's sent to an athlete is actually published, right? And we, again, go back to why we built this in the first place, is we know the feeling of working your tail off to push something to an athlete and not see it shared. And so that is the moment we want every one of our customers to have, is this feeling of magic that when I send something to an athlete, it is shared. So having an 80% publish rate, where there are some other tools in the market that'll sit around 10%, 20%. And it's we're just proud that we're started by helping athletes, and they know that when they get a piece of content from Opendorse, it's going to help them. And so we look at publish rate. We also look at the audience size just as an overall metric. So right now, there's 6,600 athletes that use Opendorse. If you add up all their social followers, it's about 1.36 billion. If you add up the social media following of every sports team and league in the U.S. and every sports publisher in the U.S., it's about 860 million. So on the other side of Opendorse are athletes that collectively influence more sports fans than every league, team, and published in the US combined, like that's a metric we track in terms of our impact on sports.
I want to talk a little bit about kind of the evolution of social media. We see that a lot of things are becoming more authentic and less published, like blogging's going away, podcasting's coming in, Instagram posts are going away, stories are coming in. Facebook is just lame, I'm sure, for most of the freshman athletes that come onto your platform. And some of them, like my youngest brother, doesn't even have a Facebook account. And then you have this whole rise of TikTok. So what does that mean for your business in that things are becoming less scriptable?
It becomes an education opportunity for athletes on how they can supplement their personality with a highlight of them at practice or in a game, or a throwback to their moments in high school, or photos of them walking into an arena. Like all those moments matter to sports fans, but when they turn the camera around, and last week at the Masters, Phil Mickelson just talking on his drive into the Masters about what he's going to do that day, like that is what sports needs, and that's what athletes need. We need to start younger on educating them on how to do that, and that if you watch SportsCenter, it's not just all highlights, right? You have the talking heads, you have the interviews, you've got these feel-good stories. Like when you look at the future of athletes on social media, it will look and feel and live like a media channel, right? Where they have the highlights of their game they just played. They've got the feel-good story about their, local community effort. They're promoting something like an advertisement. They're humanizing themselves to relate to their audience, but also, looking and feeling just like today's media channels, but bringing it all the way down to recreating that experience for every athlete's channel. Like that's what we envision and that we're empowering. But we have to start educating them earlier. So we just signed our first high school partner, they're out of Pulaski High School in Wisconsin. And man, that gets me hyped, right? Because I think about the same resources that are being provided to the best golfers on the planet. We just partner with the MLBPA. We're partners with the IndyCar. I mean, the biggest athletes on the planet is now being passed down to high schoolers in Wisconsin, right? So maybe if one of them makes it to the next level and they make it to the next level, that since day one, like cradle to the grave, like there's been a tool helping them understand the value of their audience and how to maximize it.
What types of channels are available through Opendorse? Like Twitter is an obvious one, but what are these social channels that athletes can use with Opendorse?
Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram are the three. Those are the three platforms that we publish to, help athletes publish to. And as more channels emerge, it's just we're observing the usage and habits of how athletes use them. And Instagram is a tremendous tool for athletes right now. I mean, the engagement rate is 10 to 20 times higher on Instagram than it is Twitter. And athletes, it's such a natural thing for them. They feel a lot of times handcuffed by needing to write something, right? But visually, these guys can just get it done. So those platforms are where we focus, is where their audience is most engaged. Facebook is a challenge, but internationally, Facebook is huge. So it just depends on the athlete and the market.
Snapchat is kind of a big thing for athletes now too, right? How does that work for athletes who want to use Opendorse but also want to be on Snapchat?
So remember, Snapchat is a great platform. Athletes do enjoy it. Opendorse provides pre-produced content for athletes to publish on social. And Snapchat is built around in-the-moment content and private messaging to a small group. And so we have not been in a position where we feel our core value proposition lives well within Snapchat. And for that reason, we've stayed out of it in terms of an integration. But if there's more and more demand and athletes ask for something, we do it, right? We just have not heard that ask enough.
I'm friends with Braxton, our connections with Braxton on LinkedIn, and I see he's posting stuff to LinkedIn now, which makes a lot of sense to me as athletes prepare for like a future after athletics. What are your thoughts on LinkedIn?
Well, I think there's value there in terms of an integration for us. And that's something that we're seeing Opendorse, again, evolve in how people are using it. A college athletic department is now adding their athletic director, their coaches, their staff members, their student athletes, their alumni, their mascot, right? It's like so really, if you strip away this whole, we love athletes, we built this thing to help one athlete, now we're helping thousands. The core technology is content distribution tech, right? And as our customers are using it in ways that we didn't foresee, which is pushing content to athletic directors, what that AD says on LinkedIn might drive conversation. So we're looking at that as a way that we can help bolster that. There's corporations that are using it not only to get their athletes to fulfill sponsored messages, but to get their executive staff to push out internal messaging. So that's been a cool evolution, is that a lot of people, even, you guys trust each other. You both have to tweet out and post about this show, but you might fall through the cracks. Like downloading and uploading a 200 megabyte video is not fun for anybody. And so we just make it incredibly simple. So there's been an evolution. I say that in a way where LinkedIn becomes part of that for some of our partners. And if it becomes part of it for athletes, then that's fantastic too.
Jay, you trust me?
I trust you on the Twitter.
Very narrow scope of trust.
Yep.
Blake, how big is your team with Opendorse?
So we are a team of 33 at Opendorse.
Wow.
Yeah, we have 25 full-time and 8 part-time. So we are one block from Nebraska's campus. So we got a lot of student interns that come in and hustle and work their tails off for us. But yeah, 25. And I spend half my time in New York and half in Lincoln, Nebraska, where we just built a new headquarters. And, from the ground up, it feels great to look back and know the impact that we've had on that market and that market's had on us. So Nebraska's home for Opendorse, but we're everywhere now.
Why are you in New York?
I am in New York because in the world of sports media, this is the center, right? So we will soon announce a major partnership with a league in every single one of its teams. And that league is 5 blocks that way. And when I was in Lincoln, Nebraska, it was like, 5 days that way. I could never get there soon enough and fast enough. And so for us to be right down the street from the biggest decision makers in the world of sports, that's of value. That doesn't mean we all need to be here, right? There are so many things that are good about building a company in the Midwest that we can imagine ever moving from the Midwest, but having a presence on the coast is something that we are keen on, and it's important for us as we grow.
What are some of those things about Lincoln that have been beneficial for Opendorse?
The people, Midwest values, people work their tails off. They want to be a part of something bigger than they are. They impress me every day with their level of commitment to this. Because as a founder and building 2 companies, it's all about people, man. This is all it is. We got to find good people that care, that have a purpose, they're driven, and Nebraska gives you that by default. You don't have to coach it, you don't have to teach it. It's just ingrained in them. So that matters. Cost of living is important too. Like if you're going to build a technology startup and you want to start it right here in Manhattan, that's going to be a challenge for you cost-wise. I mean, it is literally 120% cost of living adjustment from Lincoln, Nebraska to New York City. And so the same engineer, you'd have to pay them double and more, right? If you wanted to employ that same person in New York. So building our team in Nebraska has allowed us to help more athletes with less resources and have a customer experience that I think is second to none. People that will work their tails off to actually make this happen for our partners.
How come you guys fundraised, and will you continue to fundraise? It seems like you guys have a lot of traction and a high lifetime value of a customer. Yes,
we have raised $9.5 million to date. We just closed our round this week, fully subscribed. Our most recent round, it's actually oversubscribed now. It's a $3 million round. And all of the fundraising process has been about setting out key milestones and hitting them, right? This is going back to the athletes and us, right? Where we know that if we get in the gym and work out, in 2 months, I can gain 20 pounds, right? I need access to the gym, right? I just can't brute force it. I got to find a way to get in. And that's been our approach every time, is that we set a milestone and we say, how long will it take us to get there if we have to construct the gym? If we have to go find the weights? Are we going to lift trees, logs, whatever? We'll find a way to get there. But raising capital is finding a fast route to that milestone, finding a way to hit your weight gain goal, right? And I know that's that analogy. I'll stop it right there. But we take that approach to Opendorse. So, this last $3 million round, we've got a milestone. We understand how to acquire customers, right? So our customer acquisition cost is around $5,000 right now. We have a high lifetime value and annual contract value. And Of the 3 million, we put $1 million into software development to get our product up so we can increase our average contract value with new features and product development. And then we put the other 2 million towards customer acquisition, get the next 400 customers in the door, hit the 10 million in annual recurring revenue mark, which puts us on a path to be in complete control of our future. So those are things that really are tied into the why of this round. The why along the whole time is, again, changes with each round in terms of what milestone you're looking to hit. But overall, we can't help every athlete if we're not around, right? So we got to find a way to continue to progress and grow. But this most recent round is like we've got product market fit, we've got key objectives, and getting it closed and now focusing on putting it to work is something I'm proud of.
Is this a $1 billion company in the future?
That brings me to epiphany number 3. Can I do that? My answer to that is yes, this is the makings of the backbone of the future of athlete-driven media. In 2017, Jordan Spieth, it's the Travelers Championship. He's in the bunker. If he makes the chip, he wins. He chips it, rolls on, goes right in the cup. Jordan Spieth won the Travelers. By the time he gets back to his bag, he has a video of that moment to push out on Facebook to his millions of followers. And when that happened, and we saw, Opendorse was a part of that process, said this is the future. This is the future of this industry. And when you think about athletes being their own distributor of their own highlights, their own media, and every athlete on the planet having that ability and being the backbone for that, that's a $1 billion company. And it's becoming more and more true. When Rory McIlroy won the Players' Championship 2 weeks ago, same thing. He gets back to his locker and he has the highlights of that day waiting for him. And so what we envision as a company where every athlete, every level of sport, from Pulaski High School to the PGA Tour, the moment they get back to the locker, they have a piece of content from that game they just played to share. And being that type of company, there's hard fought for you to tell me that doesn't create tremendous amount of value for this market. And that's the path we're on.
Fantastic. Blake, thanks so much for taking the time. If people want to learn more about you or Opendorse after the show, where should they go?
Twitter.com/Blake_Lawrence. I try my best to be a great follow. I will encourage you and I'll also engage you with all the behind the scenes of athlete marketing. So Blake_Lawrence on Twitter, find me there.
All right, Eric, we just spoke with Blake Lawrence of Opendorse. Before we get into the deal memo here, I threw a bit of a Hail Mary and got a professional athlete to join us and give a little bit of context into that world.
Is it Odell Beckham? Did you get Odell Beckham on the podcast?
That would have been awesome. I should have tried. Actually, if I would have tried, it probably would have worked. But I didn't try. I got a hold of, instead, Braxton Miller, wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles and former Ohio State University quarterback when we were in school.
He was legendary. Hit that spin move. Braxton Miller was a fan favorite for 5 years.
And actually, at my time at Ohio State, when I was covering the football team as a freshman, I got to cover, actually that might have been my sophomore year, but I got to cover Braxton's freshman year as an incoming quarterback with Luke Fickell's first year leading the Buckeyes, only year leading the Buckeyes.
Look at us just being such Buckeye fans.
Go Bucks. Didn't have a whole lot of time here. Braxton is in OTAs with the Eagles, so I really wanted to spend this limited amount of time understanding his schedule and how he manages it. So please enjoy the short interview with Braxton Miller. Braxton, welcome to the show.
Man, thanks for having me, man, for sure.
Can you walk me through a day in the life of Braxton Miller?
Man, I say for a day for me, my day started like 7 o'clock in the morning. First thing I do, I pray to God, thank him for allowing me to get up this morning to be who I am today. Get my mind right, go ahead and brush my teeth and stuff, and then you wait for my son to get up at 8. Then, I headed to the facility and, get some good breakfast. Then I go there, get some coffee, hang out for a little bit, and go watch some films with a couple guys and go plays. Just get ready for our first meeting at 9:30. For there on, we start from 9:30 to 1:30. And between those hours, 9:30 to like 9:50, we have like a meeting with special teams. And after that, we go in the training session for like 2 hours. We get like a little 15-minute break. Then we go into offensive meetings for like an hour and a half. And, once we're done with that, it's going to be 1:30. And I say for the rest of the day, I'm just hot tubbing, cold tubbing, get my body right, make sure I'm doing the right proper steps to, stay healthy and get a good meal in. And, hey, by the time I'm done with that, I'll be ready to go back to the crib, take a nap, wait for my son, get out of preschool, for him to FaceTime me. And, you know, I'm relaxing for the rest of the night, studying plays and just chilling throughout the week.
So it sounds like most of your day is pretty scheduled and you have kind of a task at hand that you have to be completely focused on.
Oh, yeah, definitely focus. Definitely focus one thing at a time, for sure.
So how do you manage the huge social media presence that you have or the huge following that you have? How do you even allocate time to deal with that?
Man, so for me, I have a good team behind me as my brand and myself. So the things that I need, they're right on hand, 24/7. I got a great team, and that's how I manage things that I got going on outside of football, social media-wise, business-wise too as well. And so, I depend on them, to get things done when I can't do it because I got to focus on one thing at a time. That's why you got to have a good team around you to succeed and, go far.
And how do you think about like the fans of you, of the team? What do fans mean to you as a professional athlete?
Man, it keeps me who I became. Without them, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I appreciate all my fans, all the people that follow me since I was young and stuck with me through the ups and downs. And, that's what drives me each and every day because, for me, it's motivation for some of the people that, look up to me and they reach out to me through the platforms that I have and I understand like where they're coming from. So that's a big thing for me, man, just getting back to my fans and be able to interact with them and be a big, role model to them. And that's how things go with me, for sure.
With all of the scheduled time during your day where you're in the hot tub or the cold tub or studying plays or like on the field literally practicing, how do you think about allocating time to interact with those fans? Or like if you were to pick one activity to communicate with those fans, what is that?
I say, well, now, I'm part of the Modi app. So, that should be a good thing for us to talk face to face. They want to see my face and get advice and just talk to me. They can reach out to me through the Modi app. If not, they reach out to me like through Instagram, LinkedIn, or, Twitter, things like that. Common interaction things, that's how you get a hold of people that you really want to talk to.
All right, Eric, we are really leaving it all out on the field today. We just spoke with Blake and Braxton about Opendorse. Where do you want to start? You want to talk about Blake, the founder? You want to talk about Odell Beckham some more? You want to talk about the opportunity here?
Let's talk a little bit about Braxton's feedback and thoughts. Man, he is a busy human being, huh?
Yeah, I can't even imagine. You and I have talked about, we saw a screenshot on Twitter at one point of Le'Veon Bell sharing a conversation with one of his former teammates. And he was trying to showcase the kindness of his teammate. But what we saw was like tens of thousands of unread text messages. I can't imagine the level of digital inbound communication to manage when you have an audience this size or how you do it. I'm really starting to empathize with that because even in small ways, you and I are dealing with more inbound than we ever have before. And it's a real shake to the system. And on a level of scale that's 100x what we're doing, I can't imagine.
Yeah, and we've built processes to like handle inbound and to track things. And imagine just going from nothing to being drafted and having 1,000 text messages. Like, how do you handle 1,000 text messages? I can barely handle 6.
Yeah. After talking with Braxton, he got back to me with some texts and screenshots of communication with his team talking about using Opendorse and using it with a sponsorship. So it's clear that, as busy as these athletes are with their day-to-day training and everything, this stuff just isn't top of mind for them all the time. It can't be for them to really, do their true jobs. And that was a really good telling of the value of Opendorse's platform.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So let's pivot real quick into what that value could be. I mean, there are a lot of athletes in the world, Jay. And not all of them get sponsorships. I get that. But I really like that there's multiple use cases for this technology and this app.
Well, if you want to really jump straight into some of my deeper thoughts here, something Blake shared at the end of the interview was his third epiphany, is what he put it, of the world moving towards athlete-driven media. And in that world, there are tons of athletes. I feel like historically, people have thought about the world of professional athletes as actually a pretty small group of people if you look at professional athletes. But you add in college athletes and now Blake's even going downstream to high school athletes. You're talking about a lot of individuals. And right now, with 6,600 athletes on the platform, they are already followed by an aggregate of 1.36 billion followers. And sure, there's probably a lot of overlap there. So how many actual uniques are there? I don't know if that's a unique number or not. But that's a huge level of influence that can be shared through these athletes. And if they are running their own media companies, and if Opendorse is the backbone to help them do that, that does seem like a larger opportunity than just what it is today.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that the college and high school routes are going to be extremely interesting because it's essentially the school that's paying for it. You don't have to get all, it's a different type of account structure. Whereas if you go to a professional athlete and you sell to them, it's 1-to-1. You're getting them on board. Like Opendorse just went to the NFL rookie combine or rookie signing or whatever it was where you go and talk to all the rookie class. And that's a 1-to-1. Hey, do you care about media? Do you want to do this? Yes or no? But if you go to a school, we've been talking about the Buckeyes, so let's go up north. You go to a school like the University of Michigan and you sign up their entire athletics department, which is all D1 athletes. I mean, that could be a couple thousand kids for one account, a couple thousand users for one account. It's a flip of business model, but it's much more scalable.
I love this moment that Blake shared. I think his first epiphany or maybe second epiphany. There are a lot of epiphanies, more epiphanies than I've probably had in my life.
I've never had an epiphany.
Never had an epiphany. I can vouch for that. It doesn't seem like you have. The epiphany where he mentioned he went to the college organization, the University of Nebraska, and said, "Hey, I can help you use this distribution engine, essentially these athletes. I can help you distribute your content through these athletes." And they said, "That's great. How much will that cost?" And then he went to the athletes and said, "I have a ton of free content that's high quality that I can get to you." And the athlete said, "That's great. How much does that cost?" What a beautiful synergistic moment to experience that and say, okay, there is something here. Like you are taking an inefficient market and making it efficient right then and there, which I love as a value proposition to both of those stakeholders. That allows the platform to be free to athletes to use and charging a SaaS fee to the organizations and their sponsors. I think there's a real model here. There's clearly product market fit. They've grown 100% in terms of athletes on the platform in the last year. The question is, in my mind, is athlete-driven media the future? How big is that opportunity? And do you believe that this team can do it, this team from Lincoln, Nebraska?
Do you think that this expands beyond athletes?
I like this as a thought exercise. Let's think about this. My initial thought is there's probably something there. So let's think. Do you have a market in mind that is similar to this? Like entertainers, maybe?
See, I think corporations. And I know that is wild, but every corporation has employees. And if you think about the larger corporations, so I work for a company that has 4,000 people, and we get a social media blast of what to post, how to post it every single week on Monday. And I just have to imagine that the conversion rates on those are like 0. I also think that it would benefit the organization to be able to utilize social media and utilize all the 4,000 different accounts that they have sitting underneath them to push their message that they want to push, kind of like a sponsor. I see a lot of the similar dynamics there. And there's also this whole fear, especially in kind of older companies, about social media still, because people can put whatever they want out there that might harm the company. But in this case, you can kind of control the message and people know what's approved and what's not approved and don't have to like search through an email and copy all this over and paste it in. So I think it solves a lot of the same problems with pretty much the same technology. And that's something I can't stop thinking about because think about like Amazon, they have 400,000 employees or whatever. That's just an echo chamber that they could create.
That's interesting. And at a lower level, known user behavior that we've seen, the thunderclap campaigns where somebody centrally says, hey, sign up for this. Let me authorize your account to send out this message at this time. We see click to tweet. We use click to tweet when we send something to supporters. So yeah, it seems like it goes outside of that. Is that, where Opendorse wants to go? Hard to say, but I definitely do see the argument there.
I mean, if they don't want to go there, it's still, you can license the technology.
Maybe we should do it.
Guys, we are closing the Upside podcast. We're going to launch a company that's going to be called Open Corpse. We're just going to sell Opendorse technology to corporations.
Oh, you said Open Corpse? And I was like...
Oh, no, it's not a cadaver inspection company.
What's an autopsy? Oh, man, this got weird. So, Eric, let's turn our attention. Well, let's pause. Before we go there, do you think in athletics alone, or as an investor, not knowing whether they're going to take the chance and go into other verticals, do you see this as a compelling opportunity?
I think it depends on what kind of investor I am. If I'm someone who's consumer focused, like Ezra or First Round or anybody who has this kind of consumer focused orientation, yeah, this fits my thesis. I'm in, I'm on board. The numbers, I think, all make sense. It can get big enough. And one thing I don't think we really talk about much is like the platform role. It could be synergistic with other things. So by investing in Opendorse, you are now a second-degree connection to 6,600 athletes that, hey, maybe your other companies want to sponsor. So that's kind of a second-tier benefit to bringing this into a venture portfolio.
It's weird. We're actually on the same exact page there. That really
Whoa.
happens. But I was
Yeah, that
thinking
never
through the
happens.
I was thinking through the same lens. I was thinking, I do think that there's an argument to be made that this is a $1 billion opportunity, but also there's a lot of power in influence, and this is powering influence. So a good group to align yourself with, I think. So let's transition. Let's talk about Blake as a founder. We've talked to a few former athletes on the pod here thus far, Eric, and I'm just going to go out and say it. I like talking to former athletes as founders.
Is it because you're jealous? You wanted to be a former athlete?
No, actually, I don't even think that I ever really wanted that.
That seems like justification.
Probably. We also have 3 student athlete interns this summer who I'm really having a great experience, managing. So there's just something about athletes and the hustle there. Like, if I'm investing in an athlete like Blake, I just feel the determination to get through the hard times, which, in athletics world, you're literally doing, talking to our intern, Kyle, they have been doing conditioning. And he's like, every Wednesday for the past several months, I have puked during this workout. The mindset that you build in doing something like that has to be so valuable in the world of building a company.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And shout out to Kyle, shout out to Izzy, and shout out to Sammy, our 3 interns this summer. I think that aside from the general student athlete vibe, Blake is incredibly genuine. Funny enough, our sound engineer, Nathan, knew Blake from Nebraska and said he was a great guy, which was a resounding endorsement because Nathan doesn't think either of us are great guys.
we just yearn for Nathan's approval. The speed at which, after the interview, when we shared the clip of Blake talking to Nathan, like at the end of the interview, we continued recording Blake and said, hey, anything you want to say to Nathan? Within actual minutes, Nathan had found the clip that was at the beginning of this episode and stitched together that intro, which is just wild.
Yeah, Nathan's amazing. Blake's great. One thing that I don't think came through on this interview with Blake is that we've had the benefit of time afterwards. And Blake added us to his investor update every month, so we get to see and kind of keep up with what's going on with Opendorse. But he's also incredibly good at responding to updates that we send out and giving us some feedback and thoughts. So I think that that's something that's not going to come through on an interview, that kind of consistency, that kind of response time, that kind of openness. And I just wanted to mention it here in the deal memo.
Yeah, just to kind of round this out on Blake, the founder, I like that he's thinking big. It really does feel like he's thinking at a high level and thinking nationally and, vertically going down to the high school level. I just got a big vision, big swing feel from this interview from Blake, the founder. And that's someone that I find myself well aligned with.
So we've been very positive thus far. Are there any shadows that stick out to you, Jay?
I don't know what the future of social media looks like. This is, right now they're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and likely we'll add more platforms, LinkedIn, etc. I don't know what the future of social media looks like and how Opendorse may or may not need to evolve as a platform to facilitate these things. Will athletes continue to have huge followings on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram? Will there be some new platform that pops up? Will we as a culture stop being on social media? And if the way that, if we're thinking bigger to athletes being athlete-driven media, how could that media evolve and what would the needs change? And could Opendorse continue to facilitate whatever that form of media has to look like? Is it no longer as simple as pulling together content from a team around you and pushing send? Is it production? I don't know. That's my shadow, is if there's a change that is external in terms of just how we use social media, can Opendorse adapt?
And I think for me, my biggest shadow, which is going to be very counter to this show, is Lincoln, Nebraska the right place for Opendorse? It feels like Blake's already spending some of his time in New York because that's where all the media companies are. That's where all the sponsors are. That's where all the professional leagues are. Does it make sense to be in Lincoln? I don't know. I don't know that you couldn't build a $1 billion company in Lincoln, but it just feels like everything in the media and the entertainment sports world pulls everyone to New York City.
And when we talked to Blake, he was in New York. So at least he's open to traveling and doing these little deployments to where he needs to be from a relationship standpoint. Of course, you're limited if you are physically in Lincoln one day and someone at a league headquarters says, hey, can you come down the street and meet me for lunch? You can't do that when you're based in Nebraska, but he's near a very large customer who I think would continue to be relevant and indicative of the college athletic market. But I hear what you're saying, and I definitely think that is a challenge that at least we're seeing an effort to bridge as opposed to, completely work around.
It seems like an amazing business model to be completely distributed as a team.
So the next 6 to 18 months, Eric, Opendorse just closed a $3 million round of financing. What are you looking for from them for the next 6 to 18 months?
This is kind of a weird one for me, but I think team size is what I want to see. I see this as being a opportunity that requires a lot of feet on the ground, a lot of talking to athletes, a lot of selling to schools, a lot of selling to organizations, a lot of talking to sponsors, and just a lot of communications. So I want to see how the team grows over the next 6 to 18 months and what the focus is being put on. Is it on sales? Is it on tech? Where is it going?
I'm looking at continued growth in the number of athletes on the platform. And I'm doing that because I think this becomes something that can be fairly monopolistic without any real threat of regulation against them. I think they're well on their way. And if they can continue to build that headway and build that moat, they just become the de facto, if you're an athlete, you install this. And the coaches tell you that, your teams tell you that, your organizations tell you that. And from there, I want to look and see what is the rate of content creation that is increasing from these athletes that Opendorse is powering, and is that leading to more sponsorships generally? And, this is probably not a 6 to 18 months thing. Longer term, do those sponsorships prove to be fruitful, that they want to continue those relationships, and are followers of these athletes enjoying the experience more? Is this helping grow the athlete's brand by using Opendorse, or do these followers see things that don't feel like they're true from the athlete and stop following? I'm looking to see that trend.
Wow, so you want to see a lot here. You want to see penetration rates, conversion rates. You want to see... It really sounds like you just want a lot of percentages.
Yeah. Well, I want to see things continuing to go well. But I think they've found product market fit. And once you're at product market fit, it's kind of just about market penetration and growth. So, those are the measures that I'm looking for with growth. I'm probably looking a little bit further than 6 to 18 months. 6 to 18 months, realistically, I'm looking at athlete growth, how that is happening. He mentioned a customer acquisition cost of $5,000 right now. Is that going down? And what does that mean for, continued projections of team growth and revenue growth?
I like it. Jay's new segment. What are you looking for the next 6 to 60 months?
Growth, revenue.
Awesome. Well, if you guys like this episode or want to interact with this episode, you can find us on Twitter at UpsideFM, or you can send us an email if you got something a little longer at hello@upside.fm. We'll talk to you next week.
That's all for this week. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's guest, so shoot us an email at hello@upside.fm or find us on Twitter at UpsideFM. We'll be back here next week at the same time talking to another founder in our quest to find upside outside of Silicon Valley. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please email us or find us on Twitter and let us know. And if you love our show, please leave us a review on iTunes. That goes a long way in helping us spread the word and continue to help bring high-quality guests to the show. Eric and I decided there were a couple things we wanted to share with you at the end of the podcast, and so here we go. Eric Hornung and Jay Klaus are the founding parties of the Upside Podcast. At the time of this recording, we do not own equity or other financial interest in the companies which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own opinion and do not reflect the opinions of Duff & Phelps LLC and its affiliates, Unreal Collective LLC and its affiliates, or any entity which employ us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. We have not considered your specific financial situation nor provided any investment advice on this show. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Never mind, bro, that can't be matched. I'm lighting it on fire, used to run victory laps, and still I'm not even tired. It's all about the timing, yeah, that's what they say. Well, I'ma keep on rhyming, find a way.